This past week, I read the story of a young Pocatello girl, only 15 years old, who became so depressed, so despondent, that she took her own life. I've thought a lot about this story and wanted to say something about it, and yet I hesitated because I know that doing this may be hurtful to some. But as I thought about it more and more, I realized this is the discussion that we need to have. This is something that we need to talk about. Inside of every one of us, there is a light side and a dark side. There is right and wrong. There is good and evil. And for some crazy reason, most of us have a desire to embrace both. We kind of want to walk both roads, but that doesn't work very well. So in the end, people choose. Now, if we choose light, we will find that the light will grow and brighten and will slowly suffocate the darkness. Now, the opposite is true. If we go down the dark path, the light will slowly disappear until we get to the point where we see the darkness and we perceive it as light because we have nothing to contrast it with. This young girl, as I read her story, I noticed that her family has done what most families do. We seem to, in the wake of tragedy, we want to find someone to blame. We want to pin this on someone and say it's their fault. This is the reason that this occurred. And the common list of suspects have been named. There were bullies at school. There were counselors at school that weren't sensitive to her needs. There were teachers that allowed things to happen that shouldn't have happened. And while this may have been a contributing factor, it had to be a minor factor because, you see, it's part of the human condition. There's always someone or a group of someones that don't like us, that taunt us, that tease us. I was thinking about my own growing up years, and there were some traumatic things that happened. I talked to my wife. She was that tiny, spindly little girl, and she was just brutally teased from kindergarten to graduation. But yet she's still with us. So these things may have contributed to this girl's depression, but I think that we have to look deeper. As I read her story, I immediately recognized something that I thought, wow, this is tough. I noticed that this girl's last name and her mother's last name are not the same. I noticed that her last name and her father's last name are not the same. I noticed that her father's last name and her mother's last name are not the same. And I noticed that her father has left her mother to find another. Now, they don't use the term broken home very often anymore, and that's too bad because that is exactly what happens. Divorce breaks homes. Divorce breaks children. And I have never known of one single case where a couple were divorced where either the husband or the wife or both of them didn't embrace the dark side and in doing so tore up the family. So in this girl's young life, she had a tumble of new dads, new last names. Before every new dad came, there was a new divorce with all the hate and anger that goes along with that. Now, this girl had another issue that complicated her life. She chose to live the life of a lesbian. I want to make this very clear that I have no hate and no animosity toward these people that do this. But it is the dark side. It is not what God would choose for us. You see, when we embrace the dark side, we become something abnormal. We become something that is not right. And we become something that doesn't fit anywhere. And she had total support from her family in doing this. She was victimized first by her family in that unstable situation, but she was victimized again by the homosexual community. You see, the prophets of old have spoken of a time when people would call good evil and evil good. We live in those times today. And society tells her that if she has a dark side, which would lead her to be a lesbian, that dark side is okay, that there is light in that, and there is brightness in that, and there is hope in that, and there is happiness in that, and there is not. The simple facts regarding the homosexual community are these. Their relationships are temporary, at best. They are not able, in most cases, to stay together for the long haul. And so there is no permanence. Everything is temporary. The other thing that you need to recognize is inside this community there is tremendous depression, more so than is found in the non-homosexual community. And in this community there is more of suicide. Now they would tell us that this all occurs because of all the mean, intolerant people. No. I know of many, many people who do not approve of homosexuality. I do not know a single person who discriminates against, or is harsh to, or is cruel to people who make this choice. They have chosen a path that leads them to something that is not natural. And when you're not natural, you don't fit. And when you don't fit, you're depressed. And when you're depressed, you take your own life. Corinthians says, neither is the man without the woman, nor the woman without the man in the Lord. Now, at first glance, this appears to be a simple formula that we should live our lives by, that God expects our marriages, our relationships to be one man and one woman. But there's more to it than this. It says, neither is the man. What that means is you are not a man. You are less than a man unless you follow this pattern. And neither is the woman, and the woman is less than she should be. She is not a woman without the man in the Lord. And so it's a three-way principle that you need all three of those things in order to be normal and right, and therefore you fit and you belong. So here we have this young girl. She, by all appearances, grew up in an unstable home. She chose an unstable lifestyle, and her family, because they were unstable, endorsed her unstable lifestyle, and now they're surprised that she became unstable. This girl was victimized. She was horribly victimized. She was brutally victimized. But don't blame it on the school. You look to those things that shaped her life, that made her who she is, that made her herself unstable. And there you can pin the blame. I'm Lance Earle. I'll see you soon.